So today is the 27th of September 2014. This is the first day of our Vimalakirti Days of Awe weekend Endless Path Zendo Sesshin. So today we'll look at Manjushri visits Vimalakirti. Manjushri, Bodhisattva of wisdom, is also known as Manju Bodhisattva. In Tibet, he is sometimes known as Manjughosha, the gentle-voiced one. In some schools of Buddhism, Manjushri's wisdom is seen as educational and educatable wisdom, that is, learning and knowledge, intellect and intelligence. Manjushri is therefore sometimes shown with children. Attendance for his practice makes the mind sharp as well as subtle, a benefit when you're in school. He's the natural patron saint of students as well as of anyone on a life path requiring memory, understanding, and learning, for he is intelligence itself. In Zen, however, Manjushri embodies not a path of learning or knowledge, but of prajna, or fundamental wisdom. That is, non-duality, the reality of original, ordinary mind. In case number 34 in the Mumenkan, or Gateless Barrier, Mumenkan in Japanese, the great teacher Nanchuan says, "Mind is not Buddha. Learning is not the way." That's the voice of Manjushri, taking our preconceptions away, swinging the delusion-cutting sword that reveals fundamental truth and restores us to life. Intelligence itself sees through illusion and is our guide. No separation, no self-other, no wise-foolish, no inner-outer, no absorption in oneness, and no separation from it, no unenlightenment, no enlightenment, no pain, and no end of pain, nor is there wisdom to attain, as the Prajna Paramita heart of perfect wisdom says. Ultimately, there is nothing to gain or learn, proclaims Manjushri Bodhisattva, a being of pure Bodhi wisdom. Dropping it all is the true wisdom, which includes dropping attention from the very one attempting to gain, to know, to learn. Sink into your practice, right where you are, and the ungraspable truth of self-nature, which is no nature, will be clear. Dropping it all doesn't mean falling into some undifferentiated mayonnaise in which different ingredients become one mush. That's not what "it's all one" means. If it's all one, what about ants and eagles, stars and snails, hangnails and 9-inch nails, Beatles and Beethoven? Such realization practice does not mean not reading books or not going to movies. It does not mean being willfully ignorant. What then does it mean? There's an old story that's been passed around contemporary Zen circles for years. A ship is hundreds of miles off the coast of South America. Their fresh water supply is given out and they are desperate. They see another ship and signal with flags for aid, need fresh water, drinking water, help. The other ship signals back to them, drop your buckets where you are. They do so, pull them up, and drink. The water is fresh. It seems that they were off the mouth of the Amazon, and even there, hundreds of miles from the coast, the flow of fresh water would reach them. Drop your buckets where you are, is the language of Manjushri, who is also the Bodhisattva of clear attention and common sense. He functions wisely, not just in the bare, empty, silent space of the Zendo, but out in our ordinary, bustling world of 10,000 things, among clouds, stars, bugs, people, eyeglasses, cell phones, crayons, thumbtacks, cars, computers, iPads, rivers, etc., right where we are. This is where realization of what's always here takes place. Drop your buckets where you are. Yet when Manjushri appears riding his lion or swinging his sword, everything is gone. Even the great layman Vimalakirti, and yes, we're getting to him, with his many possessions and servants, with his family, furniture, jewels, horses, has only a bare, empty room to welcome Manjushri when he pays a visit. How can that be? And what does that mean? The Vimalakirti Sutra, named for that great wise layman, opens the door to many core Dharma mysteries. When we read the sutra together, we'll see for ourselves. From the perspective of non-duality, of prajna, a vast, empty of self-centeredness wisdom, of Manjushri, him or herself, there is no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, no color, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of. There is no mind. There is nothing to gain, and no one to lose a thing. There is no wisdom to attain. Not this, not that. No clinging, nothing to cling to, and no one to do the clinging. This is where and when, if we can use such time and space bound words, the always present wisdom reveals itself. This is Manjushri. Maybe this sounds a bit scary. It's not, any more than a golden sunrise or a star-filled night fills us with fear. Awe, maybe, but not fear. Emptiness is not empty at all. Dogen says to become one with the 10,000 things is called delusion. To let the 10,000 things step in, wipe everything we call me, myself, in here away, and confirm us, be us, is called enlightenment. Another name for which is intimacy. The 10,000 things no longer stand out there and distant. We are intimate with all things. Nothing is a stranger. We have come home to our original face. Enlightenment, in short, is not a thing. It is our birthright. But to gain it, we have to be willing to do the work. The Prajna Paramita Hridaya, heart of perfect wisdom, speaks of the Bodhisattva of compassion, yet it is a perfect wisdom text, is in fact the heart of perfect wisdom. Compassion is wisdom. They can't be separated. It would be most unwise to do that. Prajna Paramita, the perfection of perfect wisdom's core teaching, remains exquisitely succinct. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness only form. Form is no other than emptiness. Emptiness no other than form. Feeling, thought, choice, consciousness itself are the same as this. Dharmas here are empty. All are the primal void. None are born or die, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. Manjushri, along with Kannon in Japan, who is known as Kuan Yin in China, Avalokiteshvara and Chenrezig in Tibet, Bodhisattva of compassion, hear of the cries of the world, and Samantabhadra, Bodhisattva of action, who rides a steady-going Dharma elephant, and is Bodhisattva of selfless action, are the three Bodhisattvas central to Zen. At some Western Zen centers, Manjushri is only enshrined in the Zendo at Sesshin, when he becomes the Bodhisattva of ramped-up practice energy. He and his lion and sword add vigor to the daily practice. They put the great back into great Prajna Paramita. The traditional Japanese Zendos don't have a Buddha at all, only a quiet, all day, all night, all the time Manjushri. Typically, the Buddha remains in the Buddha hall or Dharma hall, while Manjushri sits alone or with Samantabhadra in the Zendo, in the center of the room, right among the sitters. Manjushri rides at ease on the back of a lion or sits on a lotus, with or without a sword. In our Doksan room at Endless Path, you'll see a large print of a beautiful Japanese painting of Manjushri riding a lion. He always has a book or scroll symbolizing the prajna paramita, perfect wisdom, which rises on a lotus, symbol of the blossoming of our intrinsic wisdom, of Buddha mind, the fulfillment of human potential. Buddhism does not hold that we are flawed beings who must be fixed or saved, and that enlightenment is something we must get. Rather, Zen Buddhism's view is that we are all intrinsically whole and complete, and that through the work of practice, we can both express that wholeness and completeness more fully, as well as wake up to it, realize it deeply. In ancient China, intimacy and enlightenment were etymologically the same thing. Can you get intimacy? To be intimate with, not separated from all things, the 10,000 things of our life, is enlightenment. The way to get it is not to add it on. How can you add on what has never been gone? How can you enter a room you've never left? Instead, through practice, we can see through or beyond our habitual, conditioned sense of unenlightenment, that is, of separation. We can get enlightenment only as in, aha, I get it. It's a sigh of relief. It's not like making a killing. We realize where we've always been. This is our cause for rejoicing. This is when Manjushri's lion roars. The lotus is an ancient and natural symbol of human fulfillment, for it rises out of the mud, keeps going through murky water, and at last emerges in clear sunlight where it opens and fully blooms. Sometimes Manjushri holds a nyoi or katsu. Nyoi is the emperor's curved stick, a sign of imperial spiritual power rather than a sword. It signifies that Manjushri has reached the stage in his practice life where his deepest wishes and the nature of reality are in perfect accord. The katsu, a Zen teacher's short stick, is a similar symbol of the authority that lies behind the office. It signifies the authority of the office, the sanction of tradition. It is shaped like an upright spine. It is graceful as a growing plant. When Manjushri has a sword, that sword is wreathed in flames. It is the symbol of perseverance in practice, of raising attention to this count, this breath, to just sitting, to the koan again and again without flagging, cutting tirelessly through all self-centered delusions, ultimately slicing through the fundamental delusion that snares us with, I'm in here and you and everything else are out there. This is the fundamental delusion of the world we ordinarily know, the so-called world of duality, separation, alienation, hot and cold, up and down, gain and loss, birth and death, of two-ness. Manjushri's sword cuts not in two, but in one, which is the same as the opening of the lotus, which is the same as the import of the prajna paramita scroll. It is a unified image. The sword of cutting is the flower of blossoming, is the rising of wisdom. Practice is enlightenment. Enlightenment, practice. The sword that kills delusions and separation is the very sword that returns us to a blossoming life. Manjushri in the Zendo, the patron saint of sitters, reminds us to swing our sword of practice and to do it in the only time we actually have, which is now. Still, as Zen is known as a special teaching, not dependent on words or letters, but a teaching that points directly to limitless mind, not simply thoughts, what is that text on the lotus? It is the prajna paramita, that's true. But what is that, really? What is the text we live every day? What is our sutra? We are born, we age, and we die. We wake with the day, sleep with the night. Where is wisdom? Zen insists there is such a thing, only it is not a book we can buy in a bookstore, or online, or check out of a library. We can't examine its cover or read any blurbs. It will never be made into a movie. and has little chance of being a bestseller, yet it is the most important volume we will ever read. Manjushri, with his gentle smile and quiet voice, truth does not need to yell to be heard, will help us find out. To do that, we have to join with Manjushri and swing a sword and ride the lion of noble practice ourselves. The sword of practice cuts away delusions and allows us to enter each moment new and fresh. When things are new and fresh, awake, alive, and whole, we can't help but smile. The world is new when Manjushri swings his sword. What is old, stale, and habitual is gone. This is why Manjushri is so often shown as youthful. What is old and stale and habitual has vanished. The sword is wreathed in flame, for all that we've clung to is burned up by it. And when all is burned up, when all is gone, the ever-young, ever-wise Bodhisattva says, look carefully. Can you now see what is really here? As to the lion, Zen says that our nature when awake has the vitality, courage, nobility, and power of a lion. But the lion sleeps tonight, as the song says. How to wake it up? When we were children, we might have wished we could have a lion to ride. In Zen, we can discover that we do have one. As we practice counting our breaths, 1, 2, 3, experiencing breaths, just sitting completely, examining each koan point fully, the lion wakes. In ancient China, there was a cult of Manjushri. Lay people were particularly moved by it, which makes sense. It takes wisdom to live in this world. Things are complex, deceptive, difficult, and choices must be made. In the monastery, you bow and serve, but out in the world, that won't work. In fact, it could be dangerous. To fulfill our purpose in the world takes not just knowledge, but non-dual prajna wisdom. Otherwise, we easily make mistakes. Monastics do not need this kind of wisdom as much as lay people. They are sheltered, have a roof overhead, and meals on the table. They have time to sit regularly, and everyone has a job. There is a hierarchy, a clear order of authority, which is why when monastics go out into the world, they might not find they have a functioning practice. It's totally different out here. But we lay people need not just practice effort in the Zendo, but practice realization in life if we are going to function. We are always in the jungle, where nothing is labeled and clear. We must root out causes, see into complexities, upholding the Buddha way in the midst of family, work, career, relaxation, disappointments, friendships, rudeness, anxiety, bosses, jealousies, inconvenience, happiness, etc., etc. What Zorba the Greek in the Kazantzakis novel and in the great movie of it called the full catastrophe. This is the ground of our practice. And this is where Manjushri really shows his stuff. There are several other forms of Manjushri. A four-armed Manjushri with an uplifted sword, and a serene one, sitting above churning waves, honored by attendants. This serene Manjushri sits in our Doksan line, bringing wisdom and encouragement to earnest Zen students. Manjushri appears in 4 well-known koans in our syllabus of some 600 plus koans. There is one in the Hekigonroku or Blue Cliff record that is about Manjushri and Vimalakirti, that famous, deeply enlightened, busy, wealthy layman of the Buddha's own time. And it is unclear from the text of the case itself whether the koan is meant to show Manjushri, Bodhisattva of wisdom, or Vimalakirti, the greatly enlightened layman, in the more favorable light. We have to grasp this for ourselves. Case number 84, Vimalakirti's not to in the Hekigonroku goes like this. Vimalakirti asked Manjushri, What is the Bodhisattva gate to the Dharma of not to? Manjushri said, my idea is this. In all phenomena, there are no words, no explanations, no presentations, no consciousness. There is freedom from all questions and answers. That is the gate to the Dharma of not to. Then Manjushri said, we have all of us finished giving our explanation. Now you should give me your explanation regarding the Bodhisattva gate to the Dharma of not to. Shuido, Setcho in Japanese, the compiler of the Hekiganroku, comments, what will Vimalakirti say? Again he said, I know all about that. Or in some versions the translation reads, completely exposed. All of this, the whole case, is lifted in a purposefully truncated form by Shuido, Setcho, compiler of the Hekiganroku, from a scene in the Vimalakirti Sutra, which is also traditionally known as the doctrine on the emancipation beyond comprehension. Vimalakirti, as I've said, was a greatly realized, deeply skilled, mythic, archetypal, that is non-historical as far as we know, rich lay practitioner, living a busy, active life in Vaisali, India, at the time of the Buddha. All the monks and bodhisattvas in the sutra named for him, one of the very few not focused on the Buddha himself, were nervous about going and talking with Vimalakirti. Even though he was a layman, not a monk, practicing formally and meditating all the time, he could still best all these experts in the Dharma when it came to embodying actual realization. And they knew it. In a central scene in the sutra, Manjushri, surrounded by a great host of bodhisattvas and practitioners, finally compelled by Shakyamuni Buddha himself, goes to Vimalakirti's little bare room, where the layman lies on a sick bed. Vimalakirti has taken on this illness, for nothing is beyond the reach of his actualized practice, as a skillful means to teach impermanence, as well as to reveal the inconceivability of realization. Not even recognized as a bodhisattva, he's actually so skilled in teaching the way, and his teaching so profound, he will be revealed as essentially a very developed bodhisattva, even perhaps a Buddha himself, equal in realization to Shakyamuni. In the lead up to the scene in the koan, Manjushri asks all the advanced bodhisattvas who have come with him to Vimalakirti's place to give their views on non-duality and tell how they first entered the gateless gate of non-duality, the so-called first gate of Zen. In our lineage, this opening of the gate usually begins once a student's work on the koan mu and on the koan of the sound of a single hand and their various checking questions have been confirmed by a teacher. This milestone is seen as the very beginning of actually learning how to live a non-dual daily life, a truly endless path. Interestingly, the Zen-like answers given by all the bodhisattvas in the sutra were presented hundreds of years before Zen even existed. The sutra dates from around the year 150 AD, or some people say CE, Common Era. Zen, a lively that was in India. Zen, a lively Chinese refinement of the original Indian Buddhism, does not begin till almost 500 AD. That's when Bodhidharma, a revolutionary Indian teacher and supposedly a former prince, made his way across the Yangtze River from India to China. He then established a new teaching, founded on the deep practice of pointing directly to mind itself and not relying on devoted attachment to any particular text. After all, the bodhisattvas have spoken of their initial experience of non-duality. Manjushri gives his own profound words, and they are profound. In fact, the koan case is 90% Manjushri's excellent words. He moves the drama forward, pointing out that true wisdom is to go beyond or take away all words. For words themselves, no matter how subtle, bind us to concepts, and so are abstract and limiting. With that presentation, he seemingly goes as far as anyone can go. he has come to the end of words. He's expressed the truth. Then, no doubt feeling secure in this deep view, Manjushri finally turns to Vimalakirti, whose name means spotless reputation, was also known as golden grain to Tathagata, that is, a Buddha, and asks for his demonstration. What will Vimalakirti say? What can he say? Vimalakirti is absolutely silent. He says nothing. Is he stuck? Is he dumbfounded? Has he failed? Overcome by Manjushri's immensely wise eloquence, Shwedo, the compiler of the Hekigan Roku around the year 1000 AD, presses us to look deeper. He doesn't say that Vimalakirti was silent or that he says nothing. Instead, he insists on asking, what did Vimalakirti say? In the sutra, Manjushri goes on to praise Vimalakirti highly for his truly and absolutely perfect demonstration. In other words, the tables have been turned on Manjushri. But why? How? What is Vimalakirti's perfect demonstration? Is it silence? Nothingness? Wordlessness? Manjushri is awed and says so, exclaiming, excellent, excellent. And then he tells us what happened. He says, not a word, not a syllable. This truly is to enter the gate of non-dualism. But is that correct? Is Manjushri right? Is not a word, not a syllable the gate of non-dualism? If that were all there were to it, then any time we were silent, we'd have entered the gate. What is Manjushri getting at? Vimalakirti's silence, and that's what he is, he's completely silent. If you read the sutra, you'll see. It says Vimalakirti sat there and said nothing. Vimalakirti's silence is traditionally known as the thundering silence of Vimalakirti. As such, it has echoed down the ages as a great, reverberating Dharma roar. It is not quiestic silence at all, but rather is dynamic, alive, vivid, vibrant, the source of all action, all thought and insight, beyond all words, all sounds, as well as all silence. Deep in that vastness and deeply actualizing it, Vimalakirti steps up and takes the keen, delusion-cutting sword right out of Manjushri's hand, and at the same time outroars his Dharma lion, turning it into a pussycat. But maybe there's more to it. Non-dual wisdom is another name for Manjushri, him or herself. Blake says, how do you know but every bird that cuts the airy way is an immense world of delight, closed by your senses 5? How do we realize the true Manjushri? How do we open the senses 5 that form a prison closing us in, walling us off from our own wisdom? No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind might be a clue, but that can't mean getting rid of eyes, ears, noses, tongues, bodies, or minds, the ones we clearly have. Liberation is not literalization. So what is meant? And what does the Bodhisattva of wisdom say? Alas, Manjushri says he can't help, for that wily old layman has already beaten him. We're all on our own here. Or maybe Manjushri is playing a role, stepping back and giving spotless reputation a chance to shine. Maybe he's being selfless wisdom itself by setting this up and then saying most graciously, you show us Vimalakirti, bows to you. Maybe he's the fall guy for this little drama, chosen by the Buddha to wisely, that is, selflessly, reveal that wisdom isn't controlled by monks or even by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Ordinary people can be Buddhas without looking like Buddhas. The Vimalakirti Sutra, a sutra much loved and highly regarded in Zen, presents a layman who rides the lion and swings the sword better than Manjushri himself. Why is that? What is our tradition nudging us toward? Maybe in part it's simply the realization that we don't practice to get wisdom. The work of practice is wisdom. Our practice, as Dogen says again and again, is realization. And realization is practice. And this can be taken up quite beneficially in the midst of an ordinary life, right where and as we are. Still, people can get stuck in the practice side, get hung up on the number of hours they sit, or the difficulty of the effort of practice, without grasping that practice is itself the actualization of realization. The work of seeing through self-centeredness is the work of embodying the Buddha way, dropping self-centeredness, not repressing the self or pushing it away or trying to scramble beyond it, which only reifies it, is wise practice. And it typically happens in small ways. For a lay practitioner, wisdom must function in life, not just on the mat, but among children, at the supermarket, on the job, in the roller coastering ups and downs of an ordinary life. Together, Manjushri and Vimalakirti put on a Dharma show for our sake, to give fundamental wisdom its due. Dogen says, perhaps playfully, that Vimalakirti himself has missed it. To stick to silence, he insists, is proof of a still limited, one-sided realization. Hey, what's wrong with words? Remains Dogen's point. Words, after all, are what Manjushri uses to ably present non-duality to us. Maybe Dogen is playing the Manjushri role here, proclaiming, wait, Vimalakirti is the stuck one. Manjushri uses words quite well, and by using them shows a more complete understanding, for he leaves nothing out, not even words. He doesn't stick to emptiness. He doesn't abandon words like Vimalakirti, but uses them freely, showing that words themselves, just as they are emptiness. This is the real prajna paramita, yet Shwedo has already stepped in and taken that very position away. He insists that we must come forward and be clear, asking us to directly speak up ourselves. What did Vimalakirti say? He demands. He's not allowing us to linger in an empty, one-sided view. He's telling us that Vimalakirti actually spoke. And in their jazzy little verbal duet, Manjushri honors Vimalakirti's brilliant bit of swing, too, praising that skillful pause that becomes not a lag in the rhythm, but a sophisticated syncopation, a gap that speaks volumes. How do we ordinary folk realize this complete and perfect wisdom, this complete and perfect enlightenment, this profound, vast, nothing at all wisdom that Zen says is the birthright of each of us, and that has been here from the first, and is here right now, ungainable, unlosable, perfect, whole, complete. If this is true, how do we wake to it? We start with what we have, the practice of this breath, this thought, this go-on point, this moment. And then we keep going, little step by little step, on and on. Sometimes people can be disappointed in their practice realization, thinking they're supposed to be lightning and thunder. But non-dual intimacy may just as often just sort of creep in on us. If we keep going, maybe 20 or 30 years down the line, there may indeed be lightning and that wild crashing of thunder, the sky torn apart, illuminated from top to bottom, all dualistic doubts fallen away. Our job is to keep going regardless, before and after all milestones, nourishing our run-of-the-mill realizations by letting them go, going back again and again to the practice itself as we ripen to fullness in time. The good news is that Manjushri is not simply on the altar in the Zendo. He is on our mats with us. As youthful as he seems to be, he's already been at it a long time. Manjushri, Bodhisattva of wisdom, has had his own jatakas, been a Buddha, attained what Shakyamuni realized. Then he chose to stick around and keep on helping here on this troubled earth, this saha, that is, bearable world, where despite difficulties, sorrows, disappointments, and anguish, so much good can happen if we're willing to work at it. It's said that Vimalakirti too did this as well, then came back to teach others, including even great bodhisattvas and disciples. He does this as a wealthy, eloquent, magically skilled, married layman householder living in a bare room on a sickbed. When asked why he is sick, he says that he is sick because all beings are sick with the sicknesses of greed, anger, and delusion. When all beings are well, he then will be well too. This is the so-called sickness of bodhisattvas. A particular sickness, which is actually the highest form of wisdom and non-dual compassion. Zen language, as you can see, can be deeply, wonderfully ironic. After becoming fully awakened, fully realized Buddhas, Manjushri and Vimalakirti each then became bodhisattvas, reversing the usual order of things, giving up the grand title and lofty attainment of a thus come one or Buddha to be more ordinary and take on helping roles. As a bodhisattva, Manjushri became the teacher to the past 7 Buddhas, Shakyamuni included. He put his wisdom to use and didn't sit around, satisfied with even this considerable attainment. And now he is teaching us. Only when we beg for instruction, he answers, I have nothing to teach. Just do the work. Do the practice. The lotus will bloom, and prajna, wisdom, be realized in the practice, is what he proclaims. Cutting away, he shows, is letting go, which is waking up. The sword that kills delusions, separations, false and habitual thinking is the sword that reveals the fundamental goodness, not a goodness opposed to badness, of our life, just as it is, with its difficulties, warts and all. How can this be? Waking up is realizing the wisdom that's been here, the original face that is here, now, and from the start, before even the 7 Buddhas arose. Before Manjushri was Manjushri, or more intimately, before our own parents were born. What is that original face that Manjushri's sword reveals? The sword shines brightly. The lion's roar deafens our ears. External sights and sounds are wiped away, and our original, ever youthful, because always new face becomes clear. Part of case number 46 of the Hekiganroku, or Blue Cliff Record, is titled Kyosei's Voice of Raindrops. Part of it goes like this. Kyosei asked a monk, what is that sound outside? The sound of rain dripping, replied the monk. Kyosei said ordinary people are upside down, falling into delusion about themselves and pursuing outside objects. When our minds are upside down and we are lost in the delusion of so many, many things, Manjushri will amble up on his lion, swing his sword, and take all our painfully limited views away. Vimalakirti will be there too, refining all possible perspectives, even the most advanced monkish ones, even the most deeply realized bodhisattvic ones, skillful in reminding us that the depth and import of this impermanent moment right now just as it is, exciting, boring, scary, stressful, sleepy, calm, is actually inconceivable, beyond all comprehension, which does not mean beyond our realization of it, just beyond all our limited and feverish mental grasping at it. Case number 7 is Shoyoroku, or Book of Serenity. Book of Serenity, an important Soto collection of koans we work on after Hekigan Roku, or Blue Cliff Record, represents a moment in the life of the noted Tong era, the so-called Golden Age of Zen, about 700 to 900. Zen teacher Yao Shan, or Yaksan in Japanese, he titled Yao Shan Ascends the Rostrum, and it goes like this. Yao Shan had not ascended the rostrum for a long time, that is, taken the teaching seat. The head monk said, all the monks have been anxious for instruction for a long time. Please, your reverence, won't you give a teisho? Yao Shan ordered the bell and drum, sounded in monasteries before a teisho is given. The assembly gathered. Yao Shan ascended the rostrum, the teaching pulpit, and after sitting there for a while, he descended and returned to his room. The head monk followed him and asked, you consented to give a teisho. How is it that you uttered not a word? Yao Shan said, for sutras, teachings attributed to the Buddha, there are sutra specialists. For sastras, that is, commentaries on sutras, there are shastra specialists. Why do you wonder at this old monk? If you open your eyes, right here, you'll see how the old layman Vimalakirti had an undying influence on Zen, but it wasn't by not speaking. What was it then? Please tell me. I wonder what you will say.